What is up, guys, and welcome back to the Sweat It Out podcast.
If you want to be successful, look inside.
We don't like sitting in the discomfort.
Then all of a sudden that day came when I got $20 and 2 free drinks to do a show, and I was like, oh shit, here we go, baby. You know?
Thank God she hasn't caught a chicken yet because she'll tear her head off.
Don't be soft.
That patience is key.
If all my friends are winning, then it's going to make me want to win more.
What is up, guys, and welcome back to the Sweat It Out podcast. Today we have a very special guest. This one goes all the way back for me. This one's a childhood legend at least in my life. He's the CEO of LILA, founder of Real Wellness Herbal, astrologer, founder of We Are the FFL. Guys, he's an NFL legend. Please help us welcome the one and only Ricky Williams. What's up, brother? How's it going, man?
Great. Wonderful.
How you been?
I've been great. You know, life is really good. Life is really good. I know, the world's been crazy for the past year or so, but I'm doing all right.
That's awesome to hear, man. So let's dive into that a little bit. I would definitely love to see how, especially, you being also as well an entrepreneur, playing football, doing a lot of different things, and now starting your own podcast as well that we were talking about off the podcast, which we're excited to dive into that. Tell us, how was that shift when COVID came? How was that for you when it came to your businesses and the things you were doing? How'd you shift things?
It was funny because it first hit and, like most people right away, all the revenue streams, started to dry up pretty quickly. But it was interesting. I got very fortunate because one of the things that really got hot during COVID was sports memorabilia. Mm-hmm. And about a year and a half ago, I started signing with Cannabis subscriptions. And so, I signed my name and then I write 34 and then I write like smoke weed every day or puff, puff, run or what was it? Smoking joints and scoring points.
Oh, man.
Split blunts, not carries, so I started doing, and that just got really hot. Good. And so, I had the best year since I was playing as far as signing memorabilia, which was great. But the other issues, right? It reminded me of back in 2004 when I retired from the Dolphins, where kind of everything stopped and I had to do it like a deep check-in, and it felt good. It felt good because I think there's something about these times that force us to go inwards and understand ourselves better in order to survive, at least to stay sane. And so I think I'm very fortunate to have a wonderful wife. And so, we got in the bunker together and worked on our businesses. I think in these times where you go inside, it's not time to be expressive. It's time to do that inner work. And so we got really clear and got to really focus on the businesses that we're running.
Yeah, definitely. With all this free time on our hands, you can definitely, or at least should be, looking inside and questioning, how can we make ourselves better? How can we run our businesses a little better? How can we, especially being separated from other human beings, which is obviously human connection is so important, right? How can we connect better and more truly, more holistically with other people, right? Because it is such an innate human experience. What are some of the lessons that you've been able to really learn and to foster over the past, what's been over a year now since COVID hit? It's been crazy. Right?
Yeah.
Crazy.
So I'm one of those people that I believe that we learn our whole lives. But I felt like, of course I learned, but more of what I learned was just to believe in what I've already learned, and I think it's like in football, you go through training camp and you go through practices and you train really hard to prepare you for the intensity of the game situation. And I think just the way I've lived my life, it's almost like I've been prepared for these kinds of times. And so it just tested me. It tested, am I really going to stay true to the way that I believe when the shit hits the fan, or am I going to, go hide under the covers? And so it was just a reaffirming of my training, mostly as a football player.
Oh, I absolutely love that. And I think that's one of the things that we can all agree on is that, this time has really tested a lot of people's characters. And like you mentioned, if bringing out and reinforcing, the way I've always been, reinforcing the fact that, this is who I am, this is what I've continued to be, and through a time like this. And I think that it's also allowed people to release another side of themselves that they didn't even know they had, right?
Exactly.
And that's the beautiful thing that I think that we can all learn from something like this, that we can, of course, there's sad moments. There's been some big traumas in people's lives. I get it. And I understand. But I think there's also some beauty that comes out of this, where there's more realization, more self-awareness, more growth. And there's a lot of things that people are doing now that they're finally attempting and jumping into that unknown because of the situation being. And now they're like, man, I am so damn happy.
Yes. You said it. And see, I think, finally that we're starting to come out of it. I think people are starting to tell these stories, but I think these are, this is the attitude. This is the attitude of a champion, that doesn't kill you. It makes you stronger. And on that note, to get deep for a moment, I think one of the things of how this happened is because people had to take the fact that they might die seriously. And I think a lot of times we live our lives trying to avoid thinking about it, but COVID brought it up to, right in front of our face, where every day you look on the news and you're just seeing this death count, and so, yeah, a lot of trauma, but I think it helped people be deeper, and really, like you said, happier because they're taking their lives more seriously.
Mm-hmm. And I think it allows you to take that step back and really appreciate what you do have, right? Like, okay, if I still, like, I know for us, we're talking like each and every day we'd walk in here and be like, man, I'm so glad to like be able to come in here and do this, be able to like still be able to make money, be able to like talk to you and see other people, because like you said, as the death count ticks, that means that there's fewer and fewer people that are able to go and talk to their families again, able to go back to work, and you have to really sit there and take each and every opportunity that you get from here on out as a blessing, because again, I think for so long we had it, at least in our generations, so easy. Like no real hardship, right? We don't really know what World War II was like, or Korea, or any of that. It's been pretty much a breeze for us. So finally, this is like the first real non-economic health adversity that we've had to face as a generation, where people, where a large number of people, unfortunately, are going to pass away, and something that we're going to have to take stock in our own lives.
Yeah.
So Ricky, for you, I know you mentioned, and that was another thing I was going to bring up, is spending more time with your wife, right? With your loved one. And I thought that was super important that you brought that up, and being able to discover, like, working on yourselves, both of you, the businesses. Is she a business partner when it comes to some of your stuff? And kind of how does that work if you guys are?
Yeah. So we've been married for almost 4 years. And when we first started, seeing each other and getting to know each other, one of the questions that I brought up very early in the relationship was, do you ever think about building something together? Because my first marriage, we had a decent, fine marriage, except what I felt was missing is I wanted to like be a power couple, create something together, And for her concern was more about being a mother and raising a family, which is wonderful. And so as I thought about, creating relationships for this point out in my life, I want to build something together with someone. And so my wife, when we met, she was a corporate attorney. And so I was like, okay, right, this could work. And then as we got to know each other and realized that, we're both very spiritual people that exist on the same wavelength, it was natural for us to say, what amazing things can we create together? And so she's a partner in everything I do, in all my businesses. And it's the foundation of our relationship. And, my sense is this is going to be more of the future, is because it's not going to feel right to go home to someone who you guys are just doing different things together. And I think, it's, at least I've found, it's just so much more efficient in my life for us to work so well together. Something I've realized just in these past couple of weeks is I'm half as stupid when she's around.
That's a good way of putting it. And, I think that's probably the number one question anyone getting into a relationship should ask is, can I build something with this person, right? Because ideally that's what you're looking for. I'm recently divorced myself, so I wish I had asked myself that question before getting married to my ex-wife as well, because the answer would have been no immediately. And then I would have known ahead of time.
It's funny that this has come up in the conversation, because one of, the project that I'm most passionate about right now is LILA. And this is, I'm co-founder with my wife, Linnea, and my astrology teacher, Stephen Forrest. And it's really about relationships. And it was rooted out of coming out of a good relationship, finding an amazing relationship and trying to make sense about that. And so, that's the point we came to, is that a lot of times when we get into relationships, we don't ever ask the question, like, what are we going to build together? And what I found that helped us, navigate our relationship has been astrology, and using astrology to understand who I am and what my relationship needs are, to understand my wife Linnea and what her relationship needs are. So at least we can make it work with more consciousness. And so, the app LILA is really about helping people make better choices in relationship through more self-knowledge.
That's amazing, because, I think that is one of the biggest things people struggle with, whether you want to start a business with your partner or not, but just the relationship as a whole is that connection, making sure that the connection stays aligned consistently, right? And obviously we're all going to fight. There's always going to be a disconnect no matter what. We're humans, and it's needed too, but being able to quickly bring that back in is the most important thing. And the fact that you're saying the relationship you have with your wife it's amazing. Not many people can say, hey, I'm running businesses with my wife. We're on the same wavelength. We're operating buildings and empires at a high level. And the fact that you brought up this app, I think it's amazing. I would love to dive a little bit deeper on that. On like, what is it that the app does? Because this is interesting. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So here's the thing. So what astrology can give us information about ourselves. Meaning that we all are unique and individuals, right? And although we're raised to kind of be the same, the truth is, and we all experience it, we're all unique, and we all have different needs. And one of the ways those different needs manifest is we have different needs in relationship. Right? Some people want a partner where they can just cuddle on the couch and watch movies together, and that works for them. Other people, right, they need a partner that goes to the gym with them and travels and hikes mountains with. We all have different relationship needs, and so many times we get into a relationship and we lock a relationship in before we even consider what are my relationship needs. Right? We're functioning on like the generic, find a cute person and and be with them. And so our tagline with LILA is relate deeper, right? Is that if you are making connections at a deeper level, the relationship can withstand the process of growth that life entails. Because the truth is, we come together, but we're growing. We're constantly growing. And if we don't have our growth and our trajectory in mind when we get into relationships, I think that's why the divorce rate is so high, because we don't ask these questions.
100%.
And so the main point of LILA is really pushing these questions in front of people so they can be reminded and start to ask these questions.
All right, so
so an example for my relationship, I mean, you mentioned fighting and disconnection. So and my wife and my if you look at our astrology, we both have the planet Mars. Mars is about aggression. Mars is about fighting in the area of our lives that are relationships. And so for us specifically, fighting is the way that we maintain our connection, right? If we don't fight and we avoid those difficult subjects, then they just build up and we have resentment towards each other and we don't even feel like being around each other. But when we can have a good fight to clear the air, because we built that strong foundation and we're not afraid, right? We realize this is going to help us, be closer and help our relationship deepen, then it becomes something that not we look forward to, but we're not afraid of, and we can recognize when it's time to clear the air and we can get the work done.
Yeah, and I'm super pumped that you brought this up, because I've honestly been thinking about this for a while now, and I'm like, I shouldn't say never, but it's not a bad thing to get into these types of quality fights, right? Because then you're right, you can have it out.
It is a good thing. It's necessary. Right. It's necessary.
100%.
If you don't have those, and that's the sad part. I was talking to a friend of mine, and he just went through a divorce, and he was saying that he was proud of himself that whenever him and his wife had fights, they would go into the car so the kids didn't have to see it. And I don't think that's healthy, right? Because the one thing in life that we all know, and I think sports brings it up into our face, if we can't stand up for ourselves and claim what's ours, we're going to get trampled over. And that happens especially in relationships, right? In big ways and in little ways. And so we have to have the ability to stand up for ourselves. In another way, if you're in a relationship with someone who can't stand up for themselves, you might love them, but you stop respecting them after a while.
100%.
I really love that we're talking about this. Because, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I don't think you would see it from us. You wouldn't expect it from this group of people.
And it's important, especially, amongst, 3 males, typically people, males aren't going to be talking about this to this profound level. But I think it's important because you do see the divorce rate or the breakup rate super high. you know? And I think that
Yes.
sometimes, I always say all the time, sometimes I feel like people lose certain gems of relationships that they had because they didn't know how to communicate correctly. And then you're going around, bouncing around, looking. You had that gem in front of you, and you didn't. And obviously, don't get me wrong, there are moments that you have to cut it off because it's not that gem. But there are times where,
Yes.
you know what, you could have worked on it and you could have kept that gem in front of you, and worked it out if you had the right help. And I think that's amazing what you're doing with LILA and how that's helping a lot of people. Is this something that you know, are people being coached through it? Is it more the app is showing them and giving them like tools that they can use? How's that?
Yeah, we're in the early stages. You know, we just launched our beta, and we're planning to launch publicly in the App Store early in the summer. And so there's a big plan, but the first part is really orienting people. You know, the thing that I've realized, and there's astrology apps out there, but they're so complex that the person just entering the field is too much information. And so our whole model is to make it like condensed and concise and applicable. So the first stage is we call it self-discovery. It's learning about yourself, right? To try just getting a better sense of who you are and what your relationship needs are. And I say it's learning, but it's more permission, right? Because there's certain parts of ourselves that we feel are so true, but because of what we've been trained by society and our parents, we like hide those parts away, you know? And when we can get permission to express those parts, then we can actually find relationships that work, right? Because it's the part of ourselves that we hide that end up being triggered and coming out later in the relationship anyway. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so if we can, you know, be in touch with that part of ourselves early enough, we can put it on the table earlier in the relationship so both people can say, oh, I like that about you, or no, thank you, instead of waiting until you're already bonded and then you realize these things.
Right. Then you don't have that you don't have as much skin in the game, which makes it a lot easier to make a clear decision and move forward with that decision, right? Because you're not like, oh, I've already been here for a year, like she already lives with me, it's gonna be awkward.
Or we already have kids, right? Yes, right. Mm-hmm. So this is really at the core, I think, of what LILA is gonna do best. You know, my teacher and mentor who's helping me with this project has the same. And it's so true that relationships are so much easier to get into than they are to get out of. And so if we can have more consciousness getting into the relationships, we'll make better choices. You know, I talk to people all the time about this. I say the biggest mistake we make in relationships is we choose the wrong people, right? We get in relationships with people that don't even have the ability. It wouldn't even be good for them to fulfill our relationship needs.
Yeah, I mean, my ex-wife was super hot, but that was about it. You know, it didn't go much farther than that. She's never gonna listen to this podcast, so we're good. You know, but you know, I was like looking back, I'm like, man, you fucking idiot.
You
like,
should just send her the LILA app. Be like, hey, look.
Well, because that's the other thing. That's the other thing about LILA is we can reflect on our past relationships and get some clarity about, oh, okay, this is why this was that ink. This is why it didn't do. This is why it didn't work. And in a way where it honors the individuality of ourselves and the individuality of our exes, to realize we were just different, right? We were just young and ignorant, and we got into a relationship with these false ideas about what a relationship was. Of course it wouldn't work, right? And we can gain awareness and make better choices moving forward.
Ricky, I got a question for you because we're on this topic and it's getting really interesting. What is your take on, because I feel like this is something that we all do, and this is not just like only like significant other relationships, but this also could be like friendships or business partnerships and other people. But what is your whole take around like filters? Like we as humans put filters in front of people, and then every time we come across that person, we're like filter mode. We already know what they're going to do. We know what they're going to say. And we're already triggered. We're already mad. And maybe they didn't even do something at that moment, but you're already reacting a certain way because that's what typically they do and who they are. How do you work around taking those filters out so that way you can start manifesting more of what you want from that person?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, you know, the first thing is that LILA is just not about romantic relationships. It's like you said, it's about all these different types of relationships. And the truth is, you know, when we get into a relationship with someone, so that glue that brings us together is what in psychology they call projection, right? Is there's a part of you that you're not comfortable with or that you're learning about, and you meet someone that you like who has that same kind of vibe, and then you can kind of figure it out through that person, right? It's a natural, healthy process when we're aware of it, okay? And so an example was when I was in high school, my best friend Chad Padman. Okay, he was a Leo. Okay, and he was the life of the party. He was funny, and everyone liked him. You know, I was more reserved, more shy. But hanging around with Chad, you know, I became more outgoing, and it worked. Okay, that's a positive way. If it was a negative way, I just would have expected him to be the life of the party, and I just would have like hung out in the background, and I would have felt good just because he was shining and I was close to him. I never would have grown or developed, right? And then I would have judged him for, you know, being too conceited, right? And so when we have those filters, you know, the deep truth is, especially when it's uncomfortable, but also when it's positive, is those people are representing something that we're working on it within ourselves. And this definitely happens in our personal relationships. And where LILA is going to help, it'll help you see who is this person, right? Not my projections, but who is this person that's actually here? And what of my stuff will this person probably trigger? And does that trigger feel good? And is it something that we can work on together, or does it make me not want to be around the person, right? And it's because the whole point of LILA is not telling people this is a good person for you, this is a bad person for you, is giving you the information so you can make the choice for yourself. Mm-hmm. Because again, some people are going to think like me, like I like a partner who will tell me to fuck off sometimes, right? Because
yeah,
sometimes
I
can get full of myself sometimes, and I need that person that's willing to stand up to me, right? Because being a professional athlete, everyone just became a yes person. And so I didn't like that. That didn't work for me. But for some people, that's what they need. And so just having this information about myself and about other people helps me make better choices. And that's the other part of it. When we're making better choices in relationships, we don't need filters. Okay. And if we find ourselves putting too much filters, it means you're in the wrong place. That's what I learned about myself being a professional football player. Right. When I got into the NFL, there were so many filters. I didn't know who I was anymore, you know? And that's why I was like, I need to get away so I can figure out who I am and so I can start to be myself.
That's powerful.
Yeah. And, you know, I would like to dive into that as well as like, you know, you have one of the most interesting stories from start to finish in terms of like a football career, right? From your time at UT to, you know, getting drafted and everything that went on with that. And then obviously what happened with
we got the helmet right there.
Oh yeah, we got the UT
helmet. We got a UT helmet right there.
That is awesome.
And, you know, everything that obviously happened with the Dolphins, like what a roller coaster where you really have to look inside, right? So I want to kind of dive into that and how was that process of, you know, becoming who Ricky Williams is today and really looking inside of who you are and understanding and being more aware of everything that kind of goes into the decisions that you make today?
Yeah, so I think the first half of my life, for the most part, and specifically speaking about my passion to become a successful professional football player, I think the main motivation was to not have to look inside, you know? And is that if we can make something of ourselves on the outside, right, we're so busy dealing with all this stuff that we don't have to look inside. And so, you know, when I was in New Orleans and I, you know, missed 4 games and was hurt pretty much my whole rookie year, and then my second year I broke my ankle and missed 6 games, and so my whole life, what had helped me, you know, detract from going inside was taken away from me because I couldn't play football anymore. And it also triggered all the insecurities because the thing that had bolstered me was gone now. Like, my rookie year in New Orleans was the first time since my sophomore year in high school that I didn't rush for 1,000 yards, right? And so it was just like the definition of being this successful badass football player was gone, and I was forced to look inside because I was going crazy. The outside stuff couldn't feed me anymore, and it was making me feel like I was crazy. I mean, and so I got some help, and I got some help to help me start to look inside. And one of the things that helped me the most was cannabis, and I think this is something that hopefully we're starting to talk about more now. And I don't want to take anything away from the physical medicinal benefits of cannabis, but for me, at the core of it was that it made it easier and natural for me to start reflecting and looking inside. And if you don't look at something, you can't deal with it, you can't address it. Yeah. So as soon as I started to look inside, I realized, man, it's a mess in there. And so I set off on the long journey of trying to untangle and deal with that mess. And that's really how the roller coaster started.
Right. And listen, if Ricky Williams is the number one advocate of cannabis use, I definitely think I'm probably top 5 in there. I'm been a user since I was like probably 12, 13 every day. I mean, I'm right there with you, man. And I couldn't agree more with you. The intrinsic benefits that you get, because I feel like you can kind of block out a lot of that background noise that happens throughout the day, whether people want to call it like you zone out or whatever, but I'm able to like really focus on my thoughts and like, oh shit, Anthony said something to me, but I'm, high as shit right now. So like, why do I think he's being a dick to me? Like, without me even saying anything to him. And to be able to, take that step back, maybe because it's a little delayed or there is a little pause there for me, to be able to think about it, which I usually don't do. Usually I'm just out there blurting whatever comes through my head first. That allows me, you're right, to be a little more aware of my surroundings, and not only about what other people say to me or do to me affects me, but vice versa, what my actions and my words will mean and allow other people to feel.
Yeah. I mean, I remember, back in Miami after practice, having one of my, private personal smoke sessions, and then just reflecting on my life. And I remember like this night specifically, and it was one of those moments where I realized, wow, my personal life is a disaster. My professional life is, I'm one of the best running backs in the world, and thinking to myself, like, what's going on with that? And what would it take for me to be as successful in my personal life as I am on the football field? And that's when everything started to change. And the end goal was that I have achieved. And I was talking about my marriage, and I think this is, Heisman Trophy is great, but I think my crowning achievement at this point in my life is my relationship. Because I was one of those people, I never thought I would be able to be faithful. I didn't like.
I mean, living in Miami is tough, man. Yeah. I couldn't imagine being like the best running back on the planet and being in Miami.
Yes. Yes,
I'm born and raised,
and in Austin too. So yeah, so
UT is another story. Yeah. That's even
never thought it was possible. But I have to say, I mean, it took me a while, but I'm happy in this relationship, and I see the benefit. I didn't see the benefit before, but because I have a relationship that's so valuable to me, like I see the benefit of doing whatever it takes to keep it vibrant and to keep it growing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I want to kind of dive into this because I was watching an interview that you had. I can't remember who it was with, but you were talking about, everyone knows, Ricky Williams, the cannabis user, right? But it wasn't always like that, was it?
No, not at all.
Can you talk about that a little bit and dive into like how you even became, such an advocate for cannabis?
Yeah, I mean, it was a long story, and I was in high school. I was one of those guys, and I hung out with the stoners, but I was an athlete. And back then, maybe there was one stoner on the baseball team, maybe a couple on the football team, but I was a star player, so I didn't even think about it. And then I went to Texas, and my roommate, sometimes he'd have people over on Fridays, and they would pass the blunt around, and then I would do that just to kind of fit in. And it was cool in a social setting, but again, I was an athlete, so I was like, that's not something that I do. And then it was my senior year in college, and I was running for the Heisman Trophy, and there was just a lot of like external stuff, like relationships, just a lot of stuff going on. And I remember I was so obsessed, and like in my head, I couldn't sleep. We just lost to Kansas State, and I had like 43 yards on 13 carries, and so I thought, I'm out of the Heisman race, and there's a whole bunch of things. And my roommate was like, "Dude, you just need to chill." And so he brought out his little bong, and he put it in front of me, and I hit it twice. And I remember thinking, for the first time, I get it, right? It was the first night that I could sleep. I wasn't obsessing about all the other stuff. We watched old movie. You guys probably never heard of it. This old movie called Blazing Saddles.
I love Blazing Saddles. Yep. So good.
So we watched this movie. I laughed my ass off. And next 2 weeks, back-to-back 300-yard games. Okay. And it was easy for me to recognize that something about smoking helped me let go of all the stuff that was blocking me, and it allowed me to do what I needed to do. And I took a note. And then as I went into the NFL, I started smoking a little bit more, and then gradually it became part of my self-care routine.
So Ricky, Would you say there's a difference? Because I know, you know, obviously there's people that are getting into it and they're trying to escape constantly, or they're doing it. I guess I don't want to say for the wrong reasons, but they're just doing it to get out and escape, and they just want to do it. And then there's doing it intentionally. What can we talk a little bit about that? Because I think it's one of those things where it's like, even the topic, let's say entrepreneurship, right? There's real entrepreneurs and there's people just want to use entrepreneurship because I want to be an entrepreneur, be labeled as that. You know what I mean? So I would love to dive a little bit on your take on that when it comes, you know, to weed, because I think it is something important when you do something with intention.
Yes. Oh, no doubt about it. You know, and I think the biggest culprit here, the biggest issue is our conditioning. And you know, it's funny. I was talking to a guy who's in his 60s, I think, Steve D'Angelo, and he's big in the cannabis industry. And I had him on the podcast, and I was asking him about, you know, his when he was young, what his attitude about cannabis was. And he grew up in the 60s, and he was like, we knew the government was full of shit. You know, like it wasn't even a question to us, right? But me growing up in the 80s, you know, it wasn't the same, right? It kind of like the backlash, the conservative backlash. And so we were, you know, told drugs are bad. And so even now, as we're realizing, and my own personal experience, I had to have like failed drug tests and really that a megaphone telling me this is bad, right? This is bad. It's going to cost you everything you ever worked for, right? I had to go through that fire to have the experience of, these people are lying to us. You know, I had to have that own and I think we all have to go through that. I call it a healing process of realizing that we've been lied to, right? And that, yes, people have used it to escape, and that's one route you can go down, but anything that feels good, you can use to escape. But that's the only conversation that most of us have heard. So we think that's, even when we're not using it that way, we tell ourselves we are because that's what we've heard. And so I think consciousness is, even though it feels weird, I remember I started studying yoga. And as I was studying yoga, I came across the fact that Shiva, you know, Shiva is one of the Hindu deities, is that he's the god of cannabis, and that the people that worship him would bring him cannabis. And so I started to experiment, and I started to do a prayer around cannabis. And it felt weird because this is something that I was taught was supposed to be so bad, but adding intention to it, it changed the whole experience. Really cool. And in all the research that was done in the 60s and 70s on psychedelics, and cannabis is a psychedelic, psyche meaning soul, delic meaning revealing, that cannabis does reveal our soul to us. So Bob said, is that it's all about set and setting, right? If we're in an environment that is conducive, right, to our intention, we can get the most out of this. If we're doing it unconsciously, then we are just using it to escape. And to me, this idea of escape, I think there's positive escape and there's negative escape. The positive escape is what we were talking about, right? When you get so bogged down in the details of life, right? And you need to like lift up from the fray and get some clarity, right? That's an escape, okay? But it's an escape where we come back with inspiration that helps us deal with the fray, okay? The negative escape is when it becomes too overwhelming for us and we have to, you know, we have to zone out so it's not so intense. But usually we don't come back with any inspiration, and we come back and our problems are worse. And I think so. The proof is in the pudding. People that are using anything, right? But we're talking about cannabis, and you see it feels good to be around them, and they're happy, and their life is going well. It means they're probably using it consciously. If you're around people and, you know, they can't keep a job and they can't stay in a relationship and their life is falling apart, it's probably they're using it to escape.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's. You know, how crazy would have been, I mean, we grew up in like the dare years, remember?
Exactly.
Remember like the commercials that they'd have, like
That's
the person like fucking melting in the couch, or like, I always get high and I'm like, man, like how, I like, sometimes I'll pull those up on YouTube, like how fucking dope would it be if I was just smoking with my boy and he just melted into I'd be like, bro, or like my dog started talking to me, I'd be like, holy shit, like I need to get another couple of ounces of this, like I'm going to get to fucking talk to my dog like Dr. Doolittle. Like nothing would be better. My back and finally talk to my best friend. Fuck yeah. Like,
yes.
You know, like that's, if you're trying to scare me away from weed, you're fucking making me want to smoke a little more. Like, you know, I mean, it's who would have like it. The only people that would have ever came up with those commercials were people who never in their life would even think about using drugs.
Yes.
You know, quote unquote drugs with air quotes, right?
You know what's so funny about that is I remember I was in Amsterdam with a good friend of mine, this guy Dan Lebertard. You know Dan if you're in Miami, okay?
Oh yeah. See him all the time down here.
So Dan Lebertard, it was right after my rookie season. I went back to Texas to go to school to finish up my degree, and for spring break I flew to Barcelona. And so Dan met me in Barcelona, and then we took the train to Paris, hung out, and then we took the train to Amsterdam. Okay? And at this point, you know, Dan, if you know him, he's kind of straight arrow kind of guy. And so I was like, I'm gonna get you. So we went to a coffee shop, okay, and he was like kind of scared and freaking out because, you know, he saw those Dare commercials too, but he's kind of a straight arrow guy, so he was kind of scared. And so he took a couple of hits, you know, and we sat there, and then his eyes started to glaze over, and you could feel his body relax, and he was like, I don't feel anything. and I think about, you know, that all these commercials and these things that people think, where there's so many people the first time, it doesn't even register that there's something. They just feel more calm and more relaxed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So funny.
So it's true that people that are saying these things, they haven't had the experience.
Right. And, you know, I think it's important that we do, you know, mention that, you know, it's not for everybody, right? Like I have some friends who, I mean, I love edibles, right? You can give me like 300 milligrams worth of edibles. I'm ready to go. I have a couple friends though. I have one friend that, you know, took like a 20 milligram edible and just absolutely lost his shit, you know, like had to be hospitalized, like really had some mental things go on. And that made me realize like, okay, you know, even though I want to advocate this to everybody and I think it's beneficial for a decent amount of people, there are those people out there that are like, okay, you definitely, maybe it's not for you. Right.
You know, it's funny that you say that, because as I was talking and, you know, as I was telling the story about Dan, I was thinking about the people that take edibles and they call, you know, the emergency room.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny. If you talk to anyone who works in the emergency room, you'll be shocked at how often that sometimes if you call the emergency room, that's the first thing they'll just say. Did you eat an edible?
That's hilarious.
I have friends that'll smoke a whole blunt to their face, but they refuse to touch edibles. They're like, I get way too weird with that.
I had this one. I remember, I'll never forget. I was working at LA Fitness, and I was a trainer at the time. And I remember one of the sales guys that worked there. Guy loved. He would find anything. He'll create anything to smoke out of it, and he loved edibles too. And I remember he would always bug us. He'd be like, "All right, it's at break time," and then he used to go to the electrical room. We used to go in there, hide in the electrical room. And I remember we'd always had this old guy that was a member. He's like, he'll literally put his head under the knees to the crease of the door. He's like, "I know what you guys are doing in there. I'm not gonna say it, but I know what you guys are doing in there." And I remember one day, we go to my boy's house during my, I think it was during my like a 2-hour break that I had in between a client or 3. And me and my boy go over there. And when we get there, there's like food, like, you know, normal food. And then there's like desserts. And the sales guy, my boy, he's sitting there with another guy. And he said, "Hey guys, go eat." He's like, "By the way, try the brownies that my girl made. They're delicious.
They're fire."
And I was like, okay. We start hammering them. I'm like, bro, we start hammering them and they start cracking up.
Yeah,
I'm like,
he can eat.
And
he
I
can put
eat.
down
No,
some
you
food.
don't understand. I can eat. And that's the thing. Like, I hammered those brownies. And he's like, bro. He's like, all right. He told her how I stop. And I was like, okay, what happened? He's like, I had to stop you because, and we're like, what's in this? He's like, bro, you're going to get Yo, nothing happened for an hour. Literally, I was like, okay, maybe these brownies end up sucking. So nothing happened for an hour. Bro, I get back. I had a client. I remember it was like at 6 p.m. Boom, in the middle of my session. I was like, oh, shit. And I was like, everything just slow. And I remember that was like my second time eating an edible. And I don't even know how much I ate. It was insane. Like, everything was just like, my client was just like slow. Everything was just funny to me. And I was like, all right, don't laugh, Anthony. Don't laugh. Don't laugh. Please don't laugh. And I'm there, my client. I'm just pretending like I'm like. But it was just funny because I was just like, man. I was like, I was just not, dude, I literally was like, I wasn't even worried about anything else. I was like, okay, this is cool, but does my client know that I'm that I'm fucking high right now?
The answer is yes. From personal experience, I'm telling you, your clients know. My clients, even now they're like, listen, you're on edge a little bit. You want to go take a break for 5? You want to take a quick 5? You know, like, yeah, I was like, all right, you got your pen with you, right? Like, yeah, I got my pen with me. They're like, all right, cool. And they know now. They know what's up.
And my sales boy there at the counter, he's at the sales boy, and he's like, yeah. He's like, I see you. And I'm like, oh, motherfucker. I'm like, geez. But no, man, that was so funny. It's one of my funniest experiences.
How's, moving on and talking about what the future holds for you and everything that you got going on, what are you looking forward to most, heading into the second half of this year, with everything kind of opening back up, picking back up? It really feels like people are ready to, get back to life.
I'm like, personally, I'm curious to see how people get back to life, because we talked about this earlier, like, that COVID gave people a chance to go in and do some inner work. And I'm excited to see, what the blooms look like, right? Like what it looks like as because the world has changed, right? There's going to be some things that are the same, obviously, but the world is going to be different. And so I'm curious to see what it looks like. And personally, in my life, I'm really excited to see how LILA grows, and we're doing the beta, so we're starting to get some feedback. But when this information gets out and interacting with people that are using the app, I'm just really excited to see how our team can help give people really what they're looking for.
That's awesome. Have you got?
And I think part of and you guys know part of entrepreneurship is, the general model is, you friends and family, you get your people together and you have an MVP, something that, is your idea out there in a form that people can interact with. But through that interaction, you fine tune it and you make it special. And so we're entering into that phase, and I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely going to get my hands on that.
I'm going to download it the second it comes out.
And I want to ask you, do you have guys in the league right now in the NFL or old players of yours that you're friends with, are they using it already too, and kind of the beta, or are they interested in getting it, and how is that going to help them out, and kind of like tell me how you went about that when you introduced it to them, because I know that there's definitely a lot of athletes out there that can definitely use LILA.
Yeah. So, our kind of rollout plan is realizing that we're going to have initial adopters, and the people that first get onto the app and really help us fine tune it are going to be people that have some kind of background in astrology or just someone that's been working on themselves. And I think as they start to spread the word and it gets out there, that it'll spread. And so, the audience or the persona that, that fits the football player, we're aiming at them probably early in 2022.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, I don't know of any population that might need to look more inside than male athletes in general, right? I mean,
this is a big thing about LILA is right now on especially on astrology apps, it's like 80%, 90% women. And to me, I understand it, because learning astrology, I was only on the football team. I was, talking to guys about their charts. The guy were looking at me like, what are you talking about? And even when I talk to my friends, most of them are not so into astrology, but a lot of females are. And that's an issue, because one of the things is because women use astrology against men,
Oh yeah, they're always like, oh, you're a Libra? Oh my God, I can't. Yeah, I'm a Leo or I'm a Scorpio. We're just not a match. I'm like, I don't care. Yes. Like, do you want to just go home with me? Like, I don't.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, exactly. But if I'm telling you, my son, I have a 17-year-old son, not necessarily proud of this, but I'm just telling the truth. And he's been living with me around me for the past couple of years, and so we've been interacting, and I taught him astrology. And I'm telling you, like, he would go on Tinder or whatever because he knew astrology. Like, it was like,
all those girls, you can, it's a must for a girl's Tinder profile to have.
But even if my goal is that, a woman starts to use astrology against a guy, and then the guy like surprises her because he speaks the language and shows her actually, that's not true.
Right there.
Mm. Exactly. And this is something about my relationship with my wife, is we started learning astrology together.
That's awesome.
And that's how LILA arose, because I started to see, wow, this is really helping us navigate these difficult situations. Mm. And then we would spend time talking about our exes, and we would laugh and we would joke. And I think so many times when couples talk about exes, it's tense. It's not like, it's not a pleasant experience. And of course there was insecurities that came up, but because we had astrology, we were looking at our ex's charts and trying to understand, oh, they were like this, and this is why we didn't get along, or they were like this, and this is what I loved about them, right? Just this awareness and this understanding, so that as we move forward, we're making better choices.
Ricky, do you think that this app is going to really create more awareness around the male community?
Oh, for sure. Because again, the way it's been presented to us, it seems like astrology is something for women, but it's actually much more for men. Because, it's not woo-woo like people think. To learn astrology, it's a system. You really have to apply logic and intelligence to make it work. And that's kind of why I'm joking. And I know the women listening to this are going to be pissed off, but the truth is, it's our training, but our training is that women are more emotional. And so typically when women use astrology, they use it in an emotional way. And astrology is more of a mental science, right? Even like all the famous astrologers that are writing books that are women, they're all scholars. They all have master's degrees and PhDs. So this is really something that develops the mind. It teaches us how to think logically.
Yeah, 100%. And even from an evolutionary perspective, to kind of bring things together, we've always looked at the stars, right? We've always been, even when you're talking about like, my wife and I together, we're able to do, as couples, as a community, right? We were always under the stars, looking at the stars, using the stars for navigation and to understand, crop cycles and hunting seasons and, when winter.
And those were men doing that. Those were men doing that, right?
100%.
And that's what I'm saying. And it's like, especially like, there's a JP Morgan, right? I think he has a quote that says millionaires, what's that quote?
Millionaires don't use astrology.
Yeah, millionaires don't use astrology, billionaires do. Right. And so it's just thinking of, because like planting, right? Because as we became agriculturalists, 5,000, 6,000 years ago, it was really the start of business and commerce, right? As we started to plant crops, we realized some crops were more valuable than other crops. And again, you mentioned it, we were using the moon specifically, but also the other planets to plant, right? To increase our abundance, our wealth, right? It's transferred over into business now. And so again, I think all the things that even the masculine things, even coaching football, right? I think using astrology makes you better at all of those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. I think that this is such an amazing conversation, and I'm super excited to see the future of LILA and everything that's going to happen, with your business. Before we wrap things up, I know Minna's going to have a couple last final questions to ask you. I, number one, want to say thank you for coming on. Like Minna's, been a huge fan of yours since I was, a kid, watching you run around at UT, obviously with the Dolphins, everything you were doing with them. So it's been a tremendous honor to get here and learn a little bit about your story and what you got going on now. How can people reach out to you, or how can they stay up to date on everything that's going on with LILA and the release?
Yeah. So for me personally on Instagram, I'm at Williams. And I'm kind of active on Twitter sometimes, and Rick the Laureate. And the website for LILA is Hey LILA. It's HEYLILA.com. And you can sign up for the newsletter and get notified and be part of the beta, or get notified when we're launched in the App Store.
Awesome. About to get that beta right now.
Oh, yeah. Same here. The moment we get off, we're going to sign up. Rick, on my part again, and obviously with Josh as well, we appreciate you so much, man. It's been a true honor to be here with you, talking about these deep things that, especially in the male community, we should be talking about this more, and more males should be diving into these conversations to improve their whole overall life and improve their relationships with their partners, whether it's your actual significant other or your business partner, your friendships, like whatever it is, we can just improve ourselves on all levels, and I really love that. We usually go through these rapid fire questions, so I'm ready to rip it up with you. So I'm excited. All right, question number 1. What was the biggest play in your football career?
Biggest play in my football career, college. It was college. So we were, it was my freshman year. We were playing the Texas Aggies, Texas A&M Aggies, and they had the best defense in the country. And we were playing for the last conference championship, the last Southwest Conference Championship. And I was a freshman. I was scared. I was shaking in my boots because these dudes were big. And so it was, I think it was the second quarter. It was 0-0. We ran a draw play to me, and they blitzed. And they kind of blitzed themselves out of the play, and I broke free for a 22-yard touchdown. And the confidence I gained in that one play carried me all the way to the Heisman and even beyond into the NFL. that I proved to myself, even as a freshman, that I could compete at the highest level against the best defense in the country on the biggest stage for me at that time.
Love it. Moving forward, where the world is headed to, what are you most excited about to see come out and flourish?
To see minority voices be heard and taken seriously. Okay. And I'm not sure if what we've seen this past year is going to keep on growing and expanding, but even with the election, what it feels like, it just feels like we can start to honor, the ideals. It's not all of them, but the most uplifting ideals of our forefathers, that we all have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And it feels like we're starting to move in that direction.
Amen.
Amen to that. Next question. What's the craziest and wildest experience you have ever had in your life?
Craziest and wildest experience I ever had.
It'll be on YouTube, so you can be explicit.
I guess just retiring from the NFL. It was just this moment where I was at my friend's house in the Bahamas, and I realized, okay, I'm doing it. And I pick up the phone to call the NFL, and it's like my whole life flashed in front of me. And I realized that every major event in my life had somehow been tied to football, and I was giving it up. That to me, that was the craziest moment in my life.
Wow. You were with the Ravens, right?
No, I retired twice. This is when I retired from the Dolphins in 2004.
That's right.
Yes. Yeah.
Last and final question. What is the biggest piece of advice you can leave off to all our listeners today in one sentence?
It's a cliche, but I'll give them one sentence, and then I'll give a little definition. Is listen to your heart. Okay, listen to your heart, right? But here's the caveat, right? It's cliche and it sounds simple, but it's not, because the heart whispers, okay? But all the other voices, right, from the Instagram, friends, family, like all of that stuff, those scream. And so it's listen to your heart, but realize it's something that you have to develop a skill, the ability to block out all those other voices and listen to your heart, because the only part of you that knows where you're headed and how to get there is in here.
Oh,
Love
man.
that. Guys, you heard it from Ricky, from Ricky himself. Listen to your heart and block out all those other noises and distractions. Yeah. Powerful.
I'm going to light one up tonight for us. All right, man?
Amen to that.
All right, brother.
Yeah.
I hope you have a great day. Thank you again for coming on. Until next time, everybody, make sure you guys go check out this amazing app.
And also, too, don't forget, Ricky has his podcast going. Give us the name of that
I know,
podcast.
we didn't talk about it. We said we were going to talk.
It's Curious Questions with Ricky Williams. And it's related. And so the basic idea of the podcast is I bring guests on, anywhere from music, sports, all walks of life. And I get their birth chart before they come on, and I look at the chart and I use the chart to ask questions. And so the idea is to bring out parts of my guests that, asking questions they've never heard before, and give them an opportunity to talk about things from a completely different perspective.
Love it. Guys, go tap in, go listen, go subscribe.
Oh, yeah. Subscribe.
Please.
Make sure you leave this man a review.
Woo.
All right. Thanks, Ricky, for coming on. Until next time, guys.